Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Isaac Peck. I'm the publisher of Working RE Magazine and the president of OREP Insurance. And today we're going to be talking about the title of the webinar is Learn How to Stay Compliant with New GSE Requirements. As so many of you are aware, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac put out some new market conditions reporting requirements in the last few months, and that's kind of been a big discussion item for appraisers. And I'm here today with Paul Rowe, and he's going to be talking about what those requirements are and how appraisers can really stay compliant and potentially increase the quality of analysis and reporting that they're doing in their appraisals. So before we kick it off, I just want to mention that this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you want to come back and review it later, we're going to be sending around the recording later this afternoon. And then we also encourage questions. So as we're going along, you'll see a little chat box there on your control panel. You can type your questions into that chat box. If we have time at the end of the presentation, we're going to try to get to some of the questions, time permitting. Otherwise, Paul might reach out to you later today or tomorrow to address any questions that get left unanswered. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Isaac. Hey, everybody. My name is Paul Rowe. I'm an appraiser, work at True Footage, been appraising for about 15, 20 years, and want to walk through some stuff for you today. So first, we're going to talk through the GSE updates. Then we'll go into a discussion about appraisers versus tech and AI and AVMs. We'll talk about TrueTracts and 5 easy steps. We'll do a couple of live demos. We'll not only do kind of an urban property, but we'll also do a rural one. And then we'll talk about some additional benefits of using the tool, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so let's talk about the GSE stuff. In my opinion, the writing's on the wall. So the GSEs have basically presented evidence that appraisers are not doing a good job making time adjustments. What's some of that evidence? Some of it was Danny Wiley presented this on, he's from Freddie Mac, and he presented this on a Market Moves podcast, episode 21. He basically said 7% of appraisals have time adjustments, and that's been consistent for years. So you think about like COVID and the run up and how almost every market in America was moving. Only 7% of appraisals actually had time adjustments applied. Lyle Radke from Fannie Mae has also mentioned similar metrics. And so if you look at the chart on the left, it shows based on this FHFA study that the actual adjustment the appraiser made is in green versus the predicted adjustment that the models said should have been made. And so you can see even when the appraiser did make the time adjustments, they didn't necessarily align with what Fannie and Freddie thought, and they were less than that by a substantial margin. And so because of these studies and this evidence, they want us to show our work. And so we've always supposed to analyze our market and then make time adjustments when necessary. But they felt like maybe some of us weren't doing that. And so this mandate is show your work, and they're going to provide us some guidance on kind of what to do there. So what is their guidance? Couple of key points. Number one, the box at the top of page 1, the 1 unit housing trends box, per Fannie and Freddie, the trend indicated on the appraisal must reflect the overall movement of the market based on a minimum of 12 months of data. The key is based on a minimum of 12 months of data. Without that guidance, you might think, well, the market is up over the last 3 months and therefore it's increasing. Or the market is up over a 2-year period. But this gives us some guidance on minimum of 12 months. And since most of the time our comps are within the last 12 months, I suggest analyzing the last 12 months. If the market is higher today than it was 12 months ago, that's an increasing market. If it's lower, decreasing. So I think that simplifies the analysis of checking this box on page 1. They also go on to say that the trends must be reflective of those properties deemed to be competitive to the property being appraised. So what they don't want us doing is drawing a 5-mile radius around the subject and saying, give me all of the properties that are located within those 5 miles and what is the trend. They want us to apply some filters to try and find competitive properties. Why? we've seen, especially using this tool, the high end of the market often behaves differently than the low end of the market. 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath properties that are 5,000 square feet selling for over $1 million, they may be increasing in value like we see in a ton of markets. Whereas the low end, the 2 to 3 bedroom, 1 to 2 bath, 1,000 to 1,500 square feet properties are kind of stable and they're not increasing as much because of the affordability crisis. So you see a bifurcated market a lot of times when you actually analyze a segment. And so that's what they want us to do. They want us to try and grab properties that are competitive with the subject in order to analyze that specific data set to figure out what that trend is. So that's page one. That's the housing trends on page one. That's what we're looking at there. Now, when it comes to time adjustments to individual comps, it's a different story. So they say here that an adjustment made to a comparable sale is based on market changes between the contract date of the comparable sale and the effective date of the appraisal. This time adjustment may be different, that's the key part, than the overall property value trend. So you might say, well, what's going on there? Let's look at the chart that they provide. Now, this is, in my opinion, this is an extreme chart meant to, usually when you go to an extreme on an example, it allows you to demonstrate what you're trying to explain. And I think that's what they did here. There's not a lot of markets, and I have yet to see a market in TrueTracts, and I've done hundreds, if not thousands of sessions that indicate a market that's doing this. You might see this if you're using a polynomial for regression in a certain tool and the market's going up and down and you only have 12 data points over 12 months. That can be an issue. We don't see that in the TrueTracts tool, the way that we're analyzing these markets. However, it's important to kind of understand why did they present this way and what do they mean by it. And so if you look at this market, it's 12 months. This is a 12-month trend. The market today is higher than it was 12 months ago. So box on page one, you check the box, it's an increasing market. However, if you look at comp two that sold up there at the peak sometime around July or August, the market is actually down since that sold. And so they want us to apply a decreasing time adjustment to that. The comp number four, which sold a couple months after that, that's in line with today. And so there would be no time adjustment. And then the other comps back there, if you look at comps 1 and 3, those were below where it is today, and those would be increasing. So you can have a bunch of different types of time adjustments within one 12-month period or one 24-month period. Now, that being said, again, you're not gonna, when you're using TrueTracts, you're not gonna see this up, down, up, down. You might see some variation. You will see non-linear trends, but you won't see this crazy up, down, up, down. It's gonna, the trend line is gonna reflect kind of what the market's doing. Okay, so overall takeaway, what's the takeaway? The GSEs are pointing out a deficiency in appraisals. They've identified that appraisers aren't making time adjustments as often as they should be, and they're trying to provide us with some guidance and some clarity. They're making it clear that they expect more reports to have time adjustments. And in order to accurately reflect the market, sometimes these need to be nonlinear. I want to make an emphasis there. They have said, they've never said that the time adjustment must be nonlinear. What they are saying is that if the market is behaving in a way that is nonlinear, they want you to make the adjustments in that manner. So if the market was, seasonality, they don't want us removing seasonality from the market. Most markets dip during the winter and they come back up in the summer. If you're appraising a property in the summer and you have comps that sold in the winter, they want those adjusted up. Even if you think it's due to seasonality and that's typical for your market, they don't care. They want that reflected in the adjustments. So they're placing this emphasis on show your work. We were always supposed to analyze the market and make time adjustments when warranted. That's not new. They're just saying they've identified this as an issue and they want to improve it. And so it's going to be a focus going forward. Side note, this is not anything I've heard specifically from the GSEs, but I think they've also signaled the idea that the show your work mandate may be coming for feature adjustments. They have not told us that at all. However, I attend the conferences, and when you go to Val Expo and all these different conferences and you hear the GSEs speak, they highlight, just like they have with time adjustments, they've highlighted deficiencies in GLA adjustments, lot size adjustments, things like that. And so I think they're going to follow probably a similar playbook. Who knows when? Could it be this year? Could it be next year, the year after? I don't know. But the idea that they've identified an issue with time adjustments And now they're saying, guys, we need you to show your work. It only would make sense if they're identifying issues with our feature adjustments that we might predict what's coming next. Okay, let me take a quick drink. Okay, so this quote, technology will never replace great appraisers, but great appraisers who embrace technology will replace those who don't. I truly believe that. I think there's a lot of fear out there that in our profession, that technology, in particular AVMs, AI, machine learning, it's going to start to replace appraisers and appraisal volume. It's already started to a certain extent with the GSEs. They use their proprietary analytics algorithm and they issue appraisal waivers based on their findings. They want things faster, cheaper, and with more robust analysis. So the truth is, I see it, the more we resist using technology and tools that allow us to efficiently and credibly analyze our markets, the more we're adding fuel to the fire that maybe alternatives should be explored. They want faster, cheaper, and deeper analysis. So what's the solution? It's not technology or appraisers. I think that's a false dichotomy. I think it's technology and appraisers. We have to embrace it. Let's utilize technology for its highest and best use. As it relates to market analysis, which we're going to be talking about today, let's use it to process massive data sets and complete thousands of calculations in seconds to provide us with a statistical foundation for time adjustments. Let's use it to identify and provide intuitive visual evidence of market trends for us to analyze and for the client to understand. Then as appraisers, we step in and we guide the process. We define the market area boundaries. We apply the appropriate filters to ensure credible and reasonable results. We're then going to refine and reconcile the analysis using our local knowledge and our expertise. So as it pertains to TrueTracts, if we tried to manually gather and curate all this data and do all the calculations necessary to create all the heat maps and adjust hundreds of sales and plot them on a chart and fit a trend line and type the commentary, this would take us weeks to complete one assignment. We'd have to charge $2,000. It's not financially feasible. But that's why we need to embrace technology. If technology can do all of that stuff for us in minutes and it leads to a more credible result, why wouldn't we use it? It's faster and it's better. And I think it's important to note both of those words, faster and better. If it's just better, if it's more robust analysis, but it takes you 45 minutes to complete market analysis, that's a non-starter for many and it's not going to work. If it's really fast and efficient, but the results aren't credible, that obviously doesn't work either. And so that's why we built TrueTracts. And I think that's why so many people love it. We have some quotes and some testimonials from our appraisers who are using it today, but it empowers you to complete a faster, more accurate, and more defensible market analysis than you could without it. It enables by far the most in-depth market analysis of any market on the tool, any tool on the market, and it can be done in just minutes. It doesn't replace appraisers, it makes us stronger. Okay, so I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I appreciate you guys listening to me talk about kind of that technology piece for a minute. I want to get into some solutions. I hope my message came across the way that I intended it to. I truly believe that the profession, this is where it's going, and I want to try and reach and motivate as many appraisers out there as possible to up our game, elevate our analysis. It's good for the entire profession. So let's dive into TrueTracts now. So what is TrueTracts? TrueTracts utilizes advanced analytics and machine learning elevate how we define and analyze our market. It delivers accurate data-driven insights, visualized through intuitive heat maps and charts, enabling appraisers to confidently reconcile trends and time adjustments that truly reflect current market conditions. It can be done in 5 easy steps. You're going to enter in some information about the subject. You're going to define the subject submarket. You apply some filters to ensure that you're grabbing competing properties. You're then going to define the market area, and you sit back while the tool is going to automatically gather 2 to 5 times more competing properties to analyze. You're going to review the charts, the commentary that's created for you. You're going to make trend decisions. You can add additional commentary if you want. Then you're going to export the heat map, the charts, the commentary, the 1004MC, all of that stuff will go directly into Total for you. And it will also put all the PDFs in your work file. If you're not using Total, you can create all of these PDFs and you can just attach them to your report and place them in your work file. Okay, what I want to show you now, before I hit play, this is me completing market analysis with TrueTracts in less than 3 minutes. I sped this up. I'm going to play it. I'll talk over the top of it. You can see that it's kind of a time-lapse video. But before I dig in and I show you demos, which are going to take longer than 3 minutes, because I'm going to be talking, I'm going to be explaining, I'm going to be showing different ways. But once you get used to this tool, this is a less than 5-minute process to complete the most robust market analysis that has been enabled to appraisers in years. So quickly, I'm going to hit play here, and you guys will see me walk through a property. I'm entering the subject address. I'm entering the features. You can see the time stamp on the bottom left. I just drew a subject submarket. I'm applying filters to make sure I'm grabbing competitive properties to the subject. It's creating the heat map. I'm iterating now based on the data presented to me. I'm recreating that heat map. I'm looking at all the extra competing properties. I'm defining a market area. I'm analyzing the charts. I'm looking at a 5-year trend, a 1-year trend. I'm including different data sets. I'm making some trend decisions. And we're at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and we're almost done. And at that point, you export the PDF, and then that goes into your report. Hang on 1 second here. Okay, demos. So let me unshare this screen. Let me pull up TrueTracts. Okay, so this first property I'm going to do is on Long Island. I don't know if we have any people who have seen my webinars before. I was doing one in Phoenix. I figured I'd switch it up. So we're going to do a property on Long Island, Baldwin, York, attached. We have the different forms that it supports, and now I'm going to enter in some basic home features. Built, save and classify. Okay, so what's happening now? It is using machine learning to, well, before I go into that, what does the tool know and what does it not know? It has access to all of the sales, listings, expireds, canceled in the markets that we support for the last 5 years. And so when we start here, and what it doesn't know, by the way, is school districts, zip codes, county lines, city limits, census tracts. It doesn't know any of that, and that's intentional. We want you guys to draw your boundaries based on data and not arbitrary bias. And so you let the data tell you where those boundaries are going to go. So the first thing it does is it's going to expand out to find 6,000 home sales over the last 5 years. It's going to then use machine learning to group those properties into different clusters. Up here, it tells me that the most probable cluster that this belongs to is number 2, and it shows me where those properties are. I'm going to use this information to draw my initial boundaries. And so when I draw my initial boundaries, I come over here and I grab all of these properties. Now it's asking me to apply some filters. So I'm going to apply some filters to make sure that, as we just discussed, we are grabbing properties that are competitive with the subject. Now you'll notice as I apply each of these filters, the histogram changes, and up here this changes. I started with 1,234 properties in my data set over 5 years. I've already filtered down 36% of those, and I only have 451 left. The guidance is that you want at least 100 or more by the time you're done with your filters in order for the model to learn. And so I'm applying some filters here. We have a 3-bedroom. You can see that by the red X. I'm looking at 3 and 4 bedrooms. I'm going to look at 1 and 2 bathrooms. You can see the distribution of the year built here. I'm going to go 1900 to 1955. And then here, we don't want to filter by price. This is raw sale price. We just want to remove some of the outliers from the high and low end. If you think your subject is going to appraise for 600,000, you don't want to go 500 to 700. That's not how you want to use this tool. You just want to remove the outliers. You want it to do the work. You want it to learn the trends, the heat map, and everything else. So I'm going to click Create Heat Map. I have 327 properties. I have filtered out essentially 73.5% of the properties that were in that area. That's basically telling me I am filtering these down to properties that are competitive with the subject. Let me see here. You know what? Let me do that. Okay, I'm gonna hit create heat map. Now, this is where the really cool stuff happens. It is training a statistical model on all of those properties, those 300 or so properties that I just grabbed within those boundaries that lie within those filters. It's training a model. It's trying to learn the relationship between sale price and features. When features change, when GLA gets bigger, how does that affect sale price? When lot size gets smaller, how does that affect sale price? And it's trying to figure all of that out. All of that is done because it wants to now try to predict the sale price of every one of these black dots to try and figure out what it sold for. When it learned from this model and it was able to predict the sale price of these black dots within 3%, that becomes a dark green area. What does that mean? That means that those properties, a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot house is going to sell for the same price here as it is in here. When it's off by 3 to 6%, it becomes light green. When it's off by more than 6%, it becomes either red or blue if it's inferior. But we're not done yet. We need to refine, because basically it's going to that model that it just trained, it's also going to reapply itself on the properties inside those boundaries. And what it learned here is that these properties are selling for higher. Looks like a decent amount higher. So what do we want to do? We want to retrain this model with this more similar data. So I'm going to simply hover over this, and I am going to iterate on those boundaries. Iterate on those boundaries, not based on past experience, not based on my gut, not based on a rule of thumb, but based on data. And so now starts from scratch. It goes, okay, you just gave me a new data set. I'm going to train a model based on that data set, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to try and predict the sale price of all of these other properties, and then I want to create a heat map based on that. And so what does this tell us? This tells us that all of the properties in here are pretty similar. There's no real location adjustments required here. And hopefully you're going to find all of your comps within this subject submarket. However, if you can't, you're dealing with maybe a unique property and you got to go outside of this area. You don't want to go west. That's what it's telling us. Essentially, if I wanted to use one of these comps and I put it in the grid, what this is telling me is it would probably adjust 20 to 30% lower. After I adjusted it for all the other features, it would adjust lower than the properties here. So what I could do now is I could stop here and I could go to market analysis. I have a great data set. I have 200 sales over the last 5 years. Similar properties, similar features, selling for similar prices. And this is the 5-year trend of those. If I want to zoom in on 1 year, I do that. So let's talk about what's going on here. There's a few things. Number one, we're using adjusted sale prices. So we are using this GAM model, this generalized additive model, to adjust these sales for feature differences prior to plotting them on the line. Then we're fitting a GAM line through the model to show us the trend. And you can see down here, these are the time adjustments. We'll get into that in a minute. There's a lot going on here. I want to point out, so this green area, this is something that's missing from every other tool on the market, including like when you use regression in Excel. This is a confidence interval. It's called the 90% credible interval. What it indicates to you, you don't have to remember that, that's a statistical term. What you need to understand is the more green, the more uncertain the model is of what that trend line is. And so this is what's missing. We see a lot of you guys on Facebook and in the groups posting results of, you see that up, down, and you're like, this doesn't make sense. If we had something like that, you would see a huge green area here because it would be completely uncertain as to what the trend is. The less green, the more certain the trend is. So this is a helpful indicator for you. If you see a ton of green, you need more data. If you don't see a lot of green, then you don't need a lot more data. But I want to show you, we have this backup data set here, and I'm going to activate it. I'll show you where it came from in a minute. But if I activate these other 997 sales that we have, I want to show you what that does to this trend line. It's a lot less green. Now, the overall trend is 11%. Again, if I toggle this off and I go back to the other one, this is 9.2%. This is 11%. But you could see the green becomes way less green. It means the model is way more certain. Why is it more certain? because this first group only has 31 sales over the past 12 months. If I add in this second group, I now have 169 sales over the past 12 months, and it's able to become much more certain. The outliers at the high and the low end don't impact the data as much. Also, what we're doing here is if you see these dots, you can see that they are pending sales. So we're including pending sales to help us really understand and fine tune the most recent 30 to 60 days of the market. This is going to be really helpful to really understand the truth of what's going on. So let's back up real quick. I just want to show you where these extra sales are coming from because they're super valuable in this tool and you get them really easily. So I'm going to turn off these black dots so we can see. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. If I toggle the CS, this means competing submarket. I can toggle these on and off. That's where these green dots are coming from, this extra data. Remember when this model predicted sale prices? Anytime it predicted a sale price within 3%, it knows that's a really similar area. That area has similar properties with similar features selling for similar prices that don't need a location adjustment. And so if we need data to help us understand what's going on in our market, these are competing submarkets we can pull that data from. So that's where that's coming from. Now, if you say, you know what, I know this market and I would love to use all of these to understand my market better, but this I don't feel comfortable using, it's a different county, it's a different whatever, and you just don't want to use it, we've built in the ability to constrain this. So you hover over this and I can define a market area. And so maybe I've determined my market area to only be this area here. What that's going to do is that's going to take those 900 properties down to 347, because if we zoom back out, it's no longer considering those. It's only considering properties in my market area. So I go back to market analysis. It's going to recalculate all of that data based on that new data set. I still have that same subject submarket up showing 9.2%, and that has 31 sales. I come back here and now I have 85 sales, and the trend line becomes more confident. There's less green, and I feel really good about that. We write the commentary for you. We allow you to reconcile this data, but we provide an indicator. I want to point out these eyes. These little eyes are throughout the tool. These are tooltips just to make it easier for you to understand what's going on. We have suggested commentary built in that you can copy and paste into your report. We have guidance. If you want to add additional commentary, you can simply do that and it will go out into the PDF. When you go to make your time adjustments, you have your time adjustments right down here. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. We don't know your comps. So what we're going to do is if you have your comp 1 went under contract in September, you're simply just going to click on September. You can see in the bottom right, it copied that to the clipboard. You go to total, you paste that in, it automatically calculates and makes that time adjustment for you. So you would just click on each of those months based on your contract data, your comps, and it will give you that time adjustment. We're also providing the supply of inventory. These first 3 charts are going to help check boxes for you on page 1. This is going to check an increasing trend box. This is going to check a imbalance market box. You can change that if you want. This is going to check the under 90 days of marketing time box. We have sale to final list price ratio. This is awesome to adjust your pending sales and your contingents. If you're using a pending or a contingent as comp 5 or 6, what this is telling us in this market, properties are selling on average 103% of what they were last listed for. This is a hot market, which is why prices are going up. There's bidding wars. I actually talked to the appraiser, Kathy, who works in this market, and she said, absolutely, everything's a bidding war in her market. And so you can predict what your pendings or your contingents are going to sell for using data instead of just rule of thumbs or guessing. Sale to original list price. This is the original list price to what they sold for. So you can use this to adjust your active listings. We have distress sales. We have seller concessions in markets where it's available. And then we're going to fill all this stuff out for you. So we're going to fill out your housing trends based on your decisions you made on those first 3 charts. We're going to fill out your housing price and age on page 1. We have some guidance here to help you understand what that data is based on. We're going to fill out top of page 2. We're going to fill out your 1004MC. This is dynamic. We're going to give you other additional commentary. This one I suggest you read. I don't think I'll read it real quick. I think it's important. So when you have a client that requires the 1004MC, first of all, if they don't require it, don't do it. You don't have to include this in your report. 1004MC is awful. We all know it. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they retired that years ago. Unfortunately, some AMCs and lenders didn't get the memo. They still require it. If you have to do it, do it. Fill it out. This fills it out for you. Check the boxes you have to, but then use this commentary. This commentary basically says that, look, we completed the 1004MC as you asked us to, per the assignment conditions. Here's what it reflects. But most importantly, however, the appraiser completed and relied upon a much more robust market analysis, supporting charts and commentary. These charts and analysis were relied upon to reconcile housing trends and time adjustments. As a result, page 1 trends may differ from the 1004MC. And so this whole comment is great to put in your report. You simply Control-C, you come down here and at the last field of the 1004MC, you paste it in and it will go right in your report. This is a revision prevention comment. If you don't put this in and your 1004MC differs from your deep analysis, you could get a revision, but I have used a version of this comment in my report for many years, and you don't get revisions when you explain to them what you're doing and why. When you are done with your market analysis, you're going to hit export. We've taken the time to try to explain to the underwriter exactly what we're doing, so you don't have to. So we explain what's going on in the PDF, what the process that you went through, the filters that you applied. We talk about how the tool trained a statistical model. We give them definitions of each of the markets that we defined. We provide the heat map. So you can, this is an intuitive or a dynamic heat map. You move it around, get it the way you want it to look in your report. We provide the legend. This explains everything that's going on in the heat map. We have some additional commentary. We talk about how we're doing this in line with the Fannie Mae selling guide. This is again revision prevention commentary. We're saying that also in line with Fannie Mae selling guide, the time adjustments made to the comparables may differ from the overall trend. So we're trying to explain to the lender, the client, exactly what's going on. Obviously, we're going to include the charts, the commentary, the time adjustments that you applied. All of that's going to go in your report. If you're using total, you hit export, you do the TDCX file, it puts that all in your report. If you are not using total, you're using ACI, ClickForms, another software, you simply export the PDF and you attach that to your report manually. Once this is done, I'll show you what that looks like. So it just downloaded. It will create this PDF for you, and this is exactly what you'll just attach to your report, and you should be good to go. We also provide a farm list. This was a highly requested feature. This is all of the properties that are included in the data set that was just used. So anything that you analyzed before you hit export that was highlighted, anything included in your analysis, we group those by properties. So you got the subject submarket list, you got the competing submarket list, and so on. So you have that for your work file as well. And then we provide this white paper. I suggest reading this once. It's 10 pages, but it's super helpful to really understand the model, what's going on in the background, why we're using a GAM model, why it's beneficial, how it works, how we draw the trend line, and we fit the trend line to the model and how that reflects what's really going on in the market. So this is available to you as well. And then we have this 1004MC PDF that'll go in your work file. Okay, so that is essentially the first one. Now let's jump into a rural market, because obviously we have appraisers who say, my number one problem, whether rural or not, is I don't have enough data. How am I supposed to analyze a nonlinear trend if I don't have enough data? So let's do a rural market. We are going to create a new session, and we're going to do a property in Western Massachusetts. This property is in a town of less than 5,000 people. Lot size 1.27, bedrooms. How many bedrooms does this thing have? 4, 2. 1962, 2 garages. Save and classify. So the nearest town, I should probably show you, let's see, zoom out a little bit. You can see Worcester is, I learned how to pronounce that last week. Worcester is located, 30, 40 minutes to the east, and Springfield 30, 40 minutes to the west. And so we have this kind of rural market over here. I can kind of show you the satellite view, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. This is the town that it belongs to of 5,000, but it's out here in a very rural market. So. Okay, so the model is less certain as to which cluster it belongs to, so it thinks maybe it's 10. And whenever you see the dots all spread out like this, you go, uh-oh, this is not going to be a property where I can just grab all my comps from the immediate neighborhood. Might be an 8, so I can look at 8. I go, uh-oh, those are spread out as well. And so what do you do in this situation when you're dealing with a rural market where you don't have a lot of properties? Because remember, we want to end up with at least 100 to train our model if we can. Well, what we do in this market is we go big. You start big. Remember, this is not the final subject submarket. This is just the initial one. We want to try and understand what's going on, but we want to do it with data. And so let's get started with a big one, big market area, and then we'll filter it down after we see some data to help us do that. So now we need to apply some filters. You can see there's a wide variety of lot sizes here. If you need to zoom in on an area, you can highlight it and then you can kind of zoom in there. So I'm going to apply some filters of, let's go 20,000. This is rural, so maybe we'll go up to 100,000. Come down here to bedrooms, 3 to 5, bathrooms, we'll go 1 to 3. Year build, 1990 minus, garage spaces, 4 minus, and sold price. Remember, we're just getting rid of the outliers, so maybe I come down here at the low end and I do 100, 450, 400. Okay, and there's the distribution. I have taken 1,700 sales and knocked them down to 284. I'm going to click create heat map, same process. Training a model on all of those 284 properties that lie within the filters I just applied, that lie within the geographic boundaries I just defined. It's trying to understand the relationship between the features and the sale price. It's then going to use what it learned to try and predict the sale price of every other sale of those 6,000 sales. When it successfully predicts those sale prices within 3%, it becomes dark green. That's where you want to get your comps from. That's where you want to grab data from. Those are similar properties, similar features, selling for similar prices. Excuse me. So let's zoom out here. So we have this area here, which makes sense if you think about, like, you got a bigger city over here, these are all selling for more. A bigger city over here, most of these are selling for more. And then you have this in-between land. If you're 40 minutes outside of if you're like 30 miles outside of a major city, or you're 40 miles or you're 50 miles, does it really matter that much? And in this case, it doesn't that much. However, it's picking something up. It's picking up that the properties that are selling over here are selling for more. And so we just want to refine based on the data. And so we're just going to click here and we're going to refine this subject submarket based on this data that it presented to us. And it's just going to make the model better. We're just iterating down. First, we started with one data set and it said, hey, some of these aren't similar. So we go, okay, let's get rid of those. Let's include more similar properties. And now let's fine tune this thing. Let's make it better at predicting those sale prices and helping us understand where we should be going and where not, and where we can be grabbing data from. And so now we zoom back out and we have 382 properties over 5 years here. And then we have some more properties in this CS. So if I move over here to market analysis, we have a 5-year trend, which this looks like almost every other market during COVID. And then we can zoom in to 1 year and we can see what that trend looks like. And look, there's 56 properties. These are similar homes with similar features, selling for similar prices. And I feel really good about this trend line. Now, I could go back here and I could look and we could potentially include some of these sales over here if we want, but I don't think we need to. I think we have enough sales. Now, what we might want to do here is we have this neighborhood. You don't have to mess with this if you don't want. This kind of pro tip. If you want your 1004MC, if you have to fill that out, and you want it filled out based on neighborhood data only, but you had to go big in order to get a lot of data to understand what the trend is, you can define a separate neighborhood. So if I wanted to, I can hover over this N, and I can simply define a neighborhood. I don't know this area. I'm in Chicago, so I don't know what the neighborhood is, but let's assume that this is the neighborhood. Now there's only 73 properties in that. And so when I come back here to market analysis, neighborhood does not change the analysis. The neighborhood is a compliance cluster. It's not going to change this analysis. What it's going to change is when you come down here, the housing price and age on page 1 is only going to be filled out using that neighborhood section. The top of page 2 is only going to be filled out using that neighborhood section. And the 1004MC is going to be filled out using that neighborhood section. So hopefully that you guys are clear as to what the neighborhood is versus the subject submarket. And then again, if I want to define a market area, I can do that as well. And I could say this is the subject's market area. Those are optional things that you don't have to do, but we basically did a market analysis of, think about it, if in most cases what appraisers might do is they draw boundaries 2 miles around the subject, and they end up with 73 properties over 5 years. And we can actually just look at the neighborhood, and we can see what that trend would show us. So I'm simply gonna remove the SS. I'm gonna remove CS. And so in a normal appraisal situation, trying to analyze a market, you might end up with only 14 sales in that neighborhood over 12 months. But look what it's telling us. It doesn't have enough data. It thinks the market's up 20.7%. And that's just because it doesn't have enough data. It's only got 3 sales over it's got 4 sales over a 6-month period back here. And so it's not, this is where appraisers get stuck, and they end up putting this in their report, and they make these huge time adjustments. And then they say, how does Fannie and Freddie expect me to analyze my market when I only have 14 sales over the past 12 months? You're right, you can't analyze and have a credible result, which is why we're trying to provide a tool that allows you to get more data, not just more data, but more similar data. Because if it's not similar, it's going to give you weird results. And so now this is probably way closer to the truth of what's going on in that market. Okay, so that's the rural property. Let's come back to this. Let me move this out of the way if I can. F11. How are we doing for time? We got 15 minutes. Okay, cool. Okay, so I mentioned to you guys that when we plot these sales on the trend line prior to analyzing and drawing the trend line for median sale price, we're adjusting those properties for feature differences. Why are we doing that? Well, what I'm showing you here is 2 things. Number 1, at the top, you have raw sale price. If we plot all those sales based on raw sale price, that's what the trend line looks like. That's what the distribution is. We also we ran GAM through it and adjusted those sale prices automatically, and then we fit the trend line through. The overall trend line looks pretty similar, right? It didn't change much. You can see the dots they're coalescing around this trend line way more, and the model is way more certain as to what that trend is. But if you notice here what happened at the very end, the model on the top with the raw sale prices, it looks like the market's relatively flat to slightly increasing over the last 6 months, whereas the bottom one looks like things are decreasing. And so what's going on there? More than likely up here, there was a larger mix of homes that had higher GLA or larger lot sizes or something that was showing that they were selling for more that allowed that trend line to stay steady. Whereas down here, after adjusting for those feature differences, it actually indicates that the market was actually declining. So this raw versus sale price is a really cool, valuable feature of the tool. Obviously, you guys could never do this. If you wanted to analyze 600 data points, you're not going to take the time to adjust them all, but our model can do that. Is it perfect? Are we adjusting at $85 a square foot for GLA when you might have adjusted for 62? Yes, possibly. but the model is using GAM, which is able to look at 600 data points and consider all of the differences simultaneously and try to understand what those differences in sale price, what it's attributed to, whether it's GLA, lot size, or a combination of those things. Okay, what else? So the heat map. The heat map's going to illustrate to the reader that you've defined the subject submarket in a data-driven and unbiased manner. Most of the time, your comps are going to come from here. It's going to quickly show you where to look and where not to look for comps. If you want to look for comps, if you end up looking over here, you can do that, but you might want to do some deeper analysis on location differences because something's going on here that these are, given the same features, are selling for less. And then it's automatically gathering 2 to 5 times more competing properties, which is going to lead to much more credible and reliable trends and time adjustments. It's going to solve that problem for you, where you run it in Spark or Data Master or Regression or any of the other tools out there, and you end up with 14 sales over 12 months, and you have a polynomial 4 that's going all over the place, and you're like, how am I supposed to use this? You're not going to see that when you use this tool. So it's going to provide that data-driven approach to defining our market area and our sub-market areas. Going to be able to collect more data, more relevant filtered data. You're going to get trends based on adjusted sale prices. You're going to get a nonlinear trend line when it's applicable. You're going to get your time adjustments for your comps. It includes pending sales to fine-tune the most recent trends. You're going to get a heat map in the charts. The heat map and the charts are not only for us as appraisers to quickly and intuitively understand what's going on in the market and what to do, but it's also awesome for our clients. Like, we have appraisers I've seen on Facebook, they're posting, Fannie Mae never said you have to include a chart. I'm not doing it. It's like, if you created a chart to figure out what's going on in the market, why would you not provide it? That chart, picture worth 1,000 words, it's never been more true than in this. Like, how it's the easiest way to present your data and the conclusion of your analysis is through a chart. It's very clear for an underwriter to look at a chart and understand why you did what you did and what's going on with that market. And it's a super time efficient process. There is so much going on here from an analytical perspective, but a lot of that's being done for you. Yes, you're guiding the process. Yes, you're making decisions throughout, and that's how we want it. We want you to be involved with it. You're going to make it better. If we put this on autopilot, it might work some of the time, but some of the times it would go off the rails. We need your input, your local market knowledge to control it, but leverage it to help you do better, deeper market analysis where you're getting the truth of what those time adjustments are. If you lock in what the truth is for time adjustments, it makes all your other adjustments much easier to figure out, and they make a lot more sense. Okay, additional benefits beyond just the market analysis. So there's the total integration and the PDF export. That's basically the efficiency component. Comp selection for complex properties. You can't find them in your subject submarket. This is going to show you where you should be going to look. ROV defense. Your lender shows you a bunch of, sends you a bunch of comps, but you look at them, you look at your heat map, and they're in the red area. All you do is screenshot that heat map, send it right back to them. You go, look, properties here are selling for more given the same features. That's why I didn't use them. And then I'm not allowed to talk about this yet, so I just wanted to put a teaser there. Coming soon, we have something really cool that will significantly increase the impact and the value that you get from doing these first 2 tabs of defining your market and analyzing the market. That's coming soon. Excited for that when it comes. Takeaway, the level of rigor that goes into using TrueTracts and to analyze the market should give you the confidence you need to utilize the trends and time adjustments derived to improve the quality and the credibility of your report, and you can do it in just minutes. The goal of TrueTracts is to give you that confidence. There's nothing more frustrating than looking at 4 different charts, looking at price per square foot, looking at raw sale price, looking at competing properties, neighborhood properties, what it looks like 2 miles out, 5 miles out, all that stuff, and they're giving you conflicting indicators. That's super frustrating. I've been there. It's been, appraisers who have been analyzing markets live for the last 10 years. This takes that away. It helps you understand, here's the trend, here's what's going on. You move on, you got the stuff for your work file, you're good to go. Let me take a quick drink. Okay, so we have many high-performing appraisers who have already made the switch and are using TrueTracts on a daily basis. We have over 3,000 people who have signed up. thank you for all of you people that have been early adopters of this tool. Your feedback has been super helpful. We've already released a few updates. We have a bunch of feature requests that we are going to be implementing soon. But I wanted to highlight a couple of these things because number one, they made us feel really good. And I think it might help you guys. So number one is TrueTracts is the best appraisal product I've added in 20 years. That was posted in our Facebook group just last week. By the way, everybody join our Facebook group if you want. I think it's called Spark and Synapse and maybe TrueTracts Facebook group. And the other one was, by the way, I've been using TrueTracts and was talking to an underwriter who said I had the best market condition report she's ever seen. I love that because we built this to satisfy so many things. Number one is, what's the truth? What is really going on in the market? We want to help you get there, but we want to help you get there quickly. Otherwise, you won't use it. We also want underwriters, lenders to see this as appraisers upping their game and not to send revisions and not to question it because the proof, the data is overwhelming. We also had an AMC and a direct lender reach out to us, and they basically wanted a list of appraisers using this tool. We've been demoing this for all of our lender partners and AMCs, showing them kind of what's going on with it. And we had a couple of them reach out and basically say, we want appraisers using this tool. We want to give them volume. And so they reached out. We don't want to just give people's names out, obviously, in emails without permission. So we're working on a way to have people opt in so that we can, for those of you who do want your names provided to those lenders, we will do that. So it's been really well received, not only by appraisers, but also by underwriters and then lenders who are assigning orders. This is our three tools that we have right now. And there's some confusion around when do I use which. TrueTracts, this is the foundation. We're going to be building off of this foundation onto this platform. So this is the future of appraising. We feel really strongly and confident in that. Right now, I would suggest using TrueTracts at the very beginning of your process. This is defining your market, helping you gather data that's going to fuel your analysis, market trend analysis, time adjustments, and get your 1004MC filled out really easy and really quickly. Get that heat map to help you with comp selection. So you do that first. Once you've picked your comps, quickly import and export them in and out of Spark. Those of you who don't know what Spark is a tool that does three things. What I love it most for is its comp import and export. You simply upload your 6 comps in your subject CSV file, and it has a million settings, and it translates all of that data exactly how you want. It compares the MLS records to public records and allows you to quickly make decisions between those two for GLA, lot size, and everything else. And then you just hit export and it puts it right in your report for you. It saves you 20 minutes of data entry every report. Love that. Also does a cost approach for you. Also does market conditions analysis. It is one of the best market analysis tools on the market. However, we thought we could improve on that. We did. I think TrueTracts is 10 times the market analysis tool that that portion of Spark is. But still, next to TrueTracts is one of the best. So if you're using Spark for market analysis, still a great tool. And then we have Synapse. Synapse is for feature adjustments. Okay, wrapping up here. 47% of the country has access today. Another 40 to 45% will have access in March and April. We have Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin hopefully launching this week. We then have, I think, Chicago, Detroit, and 4 or 5 others potentially launching next week. And then shortly after that, we'll have a group of, we have another group, but we should be getting to approximately 85 to 90% coverage by the end of April, hopefully closer to mid-April on that. If you want to sign up, simply go to truefootage.tech. You can go to Tools and TrueTracts, and you can sign up there. Let me just show you what that looks like. You could go here. We have some videos. We have coverage areas. If you're curious where your market is, you simply enter in your state here. You type in your county, and it will tell you Cook County. I'm in Chicago. I'm not getting any preferences here. I can't even use this in my own market yet, but coming in March, so excited about that. Let's go back here. Okay, so sign up button here. We have the all-in-one training video here, which I should actually show you that on the tool. If you're ever stuck on anything, number one, remember that all of these little eyes are here to help you understand what's going on in each section. We also have this question mark in the top right. You click on that. Contact support via this email. We have FAQs. You can find the coverage here. And we also have office hours. So every day, almost every day at noon Central, I'm on a call. You click this button, you jump right into the call with me. You give me an appraisal you're working on, and I run through the analysis with you. Or if you've already started a session and you're struggling with it, you can simply share the link to the session, and I can open it up and share my screen, and other people can learn from that session. So we've had some really great conversations. I highly recommend you come in here. If you use the tool the first time and you go, this sucks, I don't understand the results, it's probably because you did something wrong. There's some things you can do wrong with filters and some other user errors. There's a lot going on with this tool, so please jump on office hours. We'll show you what you're doing wrong and how to make it easy. Once you get used to this tool, it's literally a 5-minute process to run market analysis. Go back here. Let me see what else I need to cover. Yes, Spark for market analysis. If Spark's available in your market, but TrueTracts is not, that has been updated to handle nonlinear time adjustments. I just talked to you guys about our office hours. Join our Facebook group, and then YouTube. We have a YouTube page that has tons of training videos on there as well. Yeah, that's it for me. So Isaac, we have 3 minutes. I don't know if we have any particular questions you want to call out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think I'm going to get to all the questions here, but let's try 2 or 3. So first is, do you take seller concessions into consideration when adjusting the sales price?
Yes, so different markets behave different ways, right? Like sometimes you get a market where, like California, there's a market where they're including realtor concessions in the concession field, and it looks like every sale has 2.5% seller concessions, but it's not a real concession. Those markets, we are not doing anything with concessions because it's not reliable. So there are multiple markets across the country where the reported concessions in the MLS, we have determined that they're not reliable, and so we're not doing anything with those. In the markets that we trust the concessions that we're getting in our data feed, we will then subtract those out from the sale prices prior to plotting them on the line.
Okay, and then there's a few questions here about, when it's going to be in my neighborhood or my community. This one individual is asking about Louisville, Kentucky, and someone else is asking. They say their MLS is very small. Is this the page where appraisers can search?
Yeah, I don't know the county for Louisville. I could look it up, but it's as simple as we can make it for right now. You type in your state, you type in your county, and you can see what's coming. Now, if it says not available yet and there is no date, that means that we don't have the ability to get that data yet. So we have multiple data sources, including public records and MLS and other sources. So if we don't have the data, we don't have it. It's also a time thing, like to map out these MLSs for each of these markets. It's not an automated thing. We got to get in there and figure out like a lot of different things. And so we're excited that we're going to be able to get to 90% of markets by the end of April, but we're not going to get to 100% by the end of April. And some MLSs just don't play nice, and some public records don't play nice. So it's not always our choice on whether we enter a market or not. We would love to cover 100%. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. How does your system account for outliers in the data set?
Yeah, so let me show an example of that. So the outliers aren't removed from, they're not removed from the analysis. So this current average days on market, nothing was removed from that. This change, nothing was removed from that. But if you hover over this, you'll see that we removed the 5% of sales that had the highest days on market from the chart to provide a clearer visual representation of the market. These sales were not removed from the calculations, did not affect the analysis. what we're doing here is like if we include the highs and the lows in MLSs, you'll have one that shows 3,042 days on market. Well, if you have to go that high, it crunches this down visually so much that you can't even tell what's going on. And so we remove the top 5% and the bottom 5% so that this visually will give you a clear understanding of what's going on in the market.
Okay, well, it looks like we're just out of time. There are some additional questions here, so I know that Paul and his team are going to reach out to you if you had a question and didn't get it answered. And Paul also has office hours, and the whole team over at TrueTracts is super helpful. So I'd encourage you to take a look at what they've got going on. And thanks a lot, Paul, for taking the time to present to us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Take care.
See you guys.
Bye.